morning. My name is Beverly Pearman, and I'm proud to serve as board chair for Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon. Welcome to the 10th annual Courageous Voice Breakfast. Thank you for joining us this morning. Although we are broadcasting across the state, today here in Portland, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we are gathering is the traditional homelands of a diverse array of indigenous tribes and bands. Multnomah County rests on traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Willamette, Clackamas, bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Malala, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia River, and which is now home to a vibrant Native community representing more than 400 different tribal nations. We recognize Indigenous people as the traditional stewards of this land and acknowledge the enduring relationship between the land and the people since time immemorial. It is also important to move beyond the acknowledgement and reflect on your own history that brought you to this place. Take a moment to look up the land on which you're joining us today. We are all responsible for understanding the history of colonization and genocide of Indigenous people, and to commit to learning, building relationships, and action to support Indigenous sovereignty, priorities, and actions. Thank you to our partners at Native American Youth and Family Center for supporting us today with this acknowledgement. We are also really excited to be adapting to our new reality amid the COVID-19 pandemic, and a great silver lining is that more folks can join us in this event than even before from across the state. We are also opening up to make this more accessible by broadcasting this live today. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for your incredible support. Next, I would also like to thank all of our generous sponsors and table hosts who made today's breakfast possible. Without your help, there would not be Planned Parenthood eyes and ears in every single legislative hearing that impacts our affiliates. There would not be a team to mobilize thousands of Oregonians to make phone calls and send emails and grassroots efforts. We are only able to do our best work because of each of these sponsors and every single one of you. We hope this morning you will be inspired, empowered, and equipped with the behind-the-scenes updates you need to continue to be a champion for Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our next guest. She is the 2019 Portland Poetry Grand Slam champion and has performed at events such as the We Make Disrupt Conference, Invisible Spectrums, and Intersect Fest. Side Effects of Remembering the Little Things is her debut book with Lightship Press. Please join me in welcoming Bella.
Hello everybody, my name is Bella. I'm really happy to be doing another event for Planned Parenthood. I'm going to be doing a poem called My Mother is Still a Mother, and I hope it touches you as much as it touched me while I was writing it. So. The first time I talked about that night was with my mother. 2 years later, over a late night phone call, she asked me why I never told her. I said, because I've sat at dinner tables where you have made murderer out of women without knowing that you'd eventually be breaking bread with this person you paint, she screams. Regret into my ears so many times until she breaks down about a sibling I'd never met, cursing her own body, encompassing all her bad days as a result of a choice she made years ago. We are crying. Not over the choice, but over the fact that we dared to have one, like our bodies, our only bare blood, landing, crutch, backbone, vessel, target, never ours, never secret, never sacred to our own hands, always the gift that needs to keep on giving and giving and giving, and when we choose not to, it's a crime. Our bodies, always up for grabs, for scraps, our bodies, always up for political discretion, never a natural born right, always up for touch, for yes, for yes, for yes, for you, for you, for you, for whys, and how could we's, and how dare we's, as women, say no, and all of a sudden the world is outraged as women have a choice, and all of a sudden the world wants to take it away, keep us in the shadows, in the quiet, about our bodies, until we become unbelievable, impossible, victims, crying over just trying to have a voice, a choice. I have rewritten this poem so many times, trying to explain the night of my abortion, trying to explain why I did it, trying to explain why my mother did it, trying to make a private moment beautiful enough so you don't hate me. But I'm convinced that the only reason that this is up for discussion is because the word no cannot be fathomed dripping from my lips. So I will not give you an explanation you do not deserve, but I will say this. My mother is still a mother, even when she chose not to be one, and I am still worthy of my chance to say if and when I am ready. Thank you guys so much.
Good morning. In times as abnormal and uncertain as these, we need every moment of inspiration and empowerment that we can find. That was beautiful. Thank you, Bella. My name is Emily McLean, and I am proud to serve as Executive Director of Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon and the Planned Parenthood PAC of Oregon. I hope that each of you are safe today. So many thousands of Oregonians are in the midst of emergency. I'm thinking of everyone who has been impacted, evacuated, and are in the midst of fires. Thank you to the firefighters, emergency workers, and utility workers who were out there all night and continue today. Welcome to the 10th annual Courageous Voice Breakfast. What an incredible milestone of celebrating champions for reproductive health care access. I know my partners, day in and day out, CEO of PPCW Ann Udall and CEO of PPSO Lisa Gardner, along with my amazing team, Jimmy, Chelsea, Lindsay, Ann, and Becca, are humbled by your support. Thank you for being here. You can help us this morning right now with an easy action. Just go hit or click the share button on Facebook and YouTube and tell everyone that you're here and share this broadcast right now. The more people that join us, the more support we build. 2020 has presented to us a set of challenges many of us never imagined. A global pandemic and a subsequent dire economic downturn. 16 abortion cases just one step away from the Supreme Court. All of this in the midst of an incredible and historic uprising for justice and movement for Black lives. More than 100,000 Oregonians have been added to the Oregon Health Plan as unemployment has skyrocketed. Our legislative leadership and Governor Brown have been faced with the daunting responsibility of rebalancing our state budget while preparing for the worst. All of this and the 2020 election, where our very rights and freedoms are on the line. 2020 is a year of struggle, overwhelm, and challenge. However, it must be said that it is also a year of organizing, movement building, resistance, and possibility. While we have seen some of the worst, we have seen some of the best. We've marched and chanted, held space, checked on our neighbors, delivered food, laid down on the Burnside Bridge and said, enough is enough. Say his name, George Floyd. Say her name, Breonna Taylor. Justice for Jacob Blake. The words, warnings, and directives of President Obama and Mrs. Obama from the Democratic National Convention are still ringing in my ears. The passion that Kamala Harris shared with us as she accepted the nomination is still echoing. As a reminder, that was hope we were feeling. This year is one of immeasurable consequence. We cannot fail. We must tackle it with all our strength, resilience, and determination. We have great evidence in Oregon that we can do this. I want to share with you some of that evidence with you today from the last year. When COVID-19 struck, right-wing politicians tried to declare abortion non-essential in a dozen states, but we said, not in Oregon. Our small team jumped into action and advocated to ensure abortion, contraception, and gender-affirming care were deemed essential services. The Supreme Court ruled in July that employers can deny employees birth control coverage because of their religious views. And what did we say? Not in Oregon. We passed the Reproductive Health Equity Act, which safeguards most Oregonians. Louisiana sent an egregious case to the Supreme Court that would have dismantled Roe v. Wade. We said, not in Oregon. Instead, with our Attorney General, Ellen Rosenblum, we have challenged the Trump administration's extreme attacks on reproductive health care every step of the way. While the Trump administration tries to dismantle the teen pregnancy prevention program, we have said, not in Oregon. With our affiliates, we are working to expand sex education access and ensure that curriculum is accurate and inclusive. While the Trump administration championed conservative anti-Planned Parenthood candidates in the primaries, we said, not in Oregon. Planned Parenthood PAC of Oregon is supporting an unprecedented slate of candidates that represent a wider cross-section of Oregonians than ever before. Candidates like Deb Patterson and Jackie Leung in Salem, Eileen Kiley and Jacob Croft in Bend, Cal Mukamoto in Coos Bay, and Melissa Cribbins on the coast. And at the top of our ballot, Shamia Fagan for Secretary of State. We are so excited to stand with candidates like Con Pham, Ricky Ruiz, Winsve Campos, Maxine Dexter, Kate Lieber, Lisa Reynolds, and so many more. We hope you get to know Karina Miller in Warm Springs, and Dacia Graber in Tigard, Debbie Booth Schmidt on the North Coast. There are so many. So if you are an elected official or candidate joining us today, please put your name and district in the chat now for a roll call of our incredible leadership. Thank you so much for being here. Where would we be without our federal delegation? Other states might lack champions in Congress, but not in Oregon. Senators Jeff Merkley and Ron Wyden are standing up against the Trump administration every single day for us, along with the amazing Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici, Congressman Earl Blumenauer, Congressman Kurt Schrader, and Congressman Peter DeFazio. Pay attention to his race. Thank you to our delegation for your support today and every day. As healthcare access grew limited with stay-at-home orders and many states wondered if they could provide telehealth care, we said, not in Oregon. We worked with our state and ensured our healthcare affiliates had what they needed to fully provide telehealth rapidly. As the pandemic wreaks havoc on state budgets and reproductive health care is threatened, we said, not in Oregon, with the leadership of champions like Andrea Salinas and Rob Noss, and the co-chairs of Ways and Means, Senators Betsy Johnson and Elizabeth Steiner Hayward, and Representative Dan Rehfield. Thank you. When our opponents work to divide us, we say, not in Oregon. We know that we are better and stronger in partnership and coalition. We know that we are better with friends like Forward Together, NARAL, APONO, ACLU, Basic Rights Oregon, Fair Shot, and SEIU. There is so much to support this year. Countless Planned Parenthood patients rely on the Oregon Health Plan. That is why we support voting yes on Measure 108 and voting yes for a healthy future. We know that if a Black patient is fearful of traveling to one of our health centers, that's a reproductive health issue. Each of us is impacted by economic inequity, childcare, family leave policy, public safety, housing, policing, transportation, education, and so much more. Our reproductive freedom is inextricably connected to the other barriers that we face. With your support, we can invest in a nationally recognized fellowship program that is building the leadership we need in our state. Our fellows and volunteers are out in the world running campaigns, working for the CDC, staffing presidential and congressional candidates, and that is just a sampling. The pressure is on in Oregon specifically, and we could not do it without each of you, starting with our gold sponsors. Christine and David Vernier, thank you both so much. This year's silver sponsors are Kristen Coppola, LNS Captioning, and Oregon's Democratic Congressional Delegation. Thank you all so much. Our bronze sponsors are ACLU of Oregon, Beverly Pearman, Margaret Halleck, Morel Inc., Planned Parenthood Columbia Willamette, Planned Parenthood of Southwestern Oregon, Rabbi Rachel Joseph and Dr. Sarah Spettel, The Doctors Company, The Pivot Group, and Winning Mark. And we are so appreciative of our table hosts and everyone else who helped make today's event possible. Thank you. Last summer, while my partner Tom and I were in the Wallowas, I came across a Mary Oliver poem that I really loved. The poem came to mind recently, and I think it's the nudge I needed for these final 55 days until the election. It's for those of us in the position to help, in the position to give. It's for those of us with the privilege to ensure our rights and our neighbors' rights are protected. Here is our poem for 2020. I go down to the shore in the morning, and depending on the hour, the waves are rolling in or moving out. And I say, oh, I am miserable. What should I do? And the sea says, in its lovely voice, excuse me, I have work to do. Now, it is my honor to introduce a very special guest, Alexis McGill Johnson, who was named this summer as permanent president of Planned Parenthood Action Fund. Throughout her life, Alexis has been a catalyst for social change and a warrior for justice and equity. And now she is steering our organization through one of the most difficult times in our history with unfailing courage, tenacity, and resolve. Please join me in welcoming Alexis McGill Johnson.
Family, I'm so glad to be joining all of you this morning. Today, I want to thank the dedicated staff in Oregon for all your hard work to protect access to care. To Dr. Ann Udall and Lisa Gardner, who lead the fight for Planned Parenthood Columbia-Willamette and Planned Parenthood of Southwestern Oregon. None of this is possible without you. I wish I could be with you in person, but I'm so honored to present the Marilyn Epstein Pro-Choice Champion Award. Every year, Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon presents this award to recognize leaders who go above and beyond in advocating for reproductive freedom. This year, I'm thrilled to present the award to Attorney General Ellen Rosenblum. Under the Trump administration, the courts have become the last and sometimes only line of defense against dangerous and unconstitutional attacks on basic rights. But in Oregon, that line of defense is strong, in large part because of Attorney General Rosenblum. During the COVID pandemic, as states declared emergencies and some pounced on the opportunity to block access to abortion, she made it clear that Oregon, and I quote, would never budge from our guarantee of reproductive rights, including timely access to abortion services. Her convictions run deep. In 2017, she advocated the passage of the Reproductive Health Equity Act, the nation's strongest reproductive health care policy. Attorney General Rosenblum knows that Oregonians should be able to access sexual and reproductive health care regardless of socioeconomic or citizenship status. She led a lawsuit against the Title X gag rule, which has stripped funding for reproductive health care providers like Planned Parenthood health centers, who serve tens of thousands of Oregonians and millions nationwide. Last November, under her leadership as co-chair, the Democratic Attorneys General Association announced a litmus test for all future endorsements. Democratic Attorneys General must publicly announce their support for access to safe and legal abortion. And when the Trump administration brought their anti-birth control case to the Supreme Court, she filed an amicus brief, standing with the 9 out of 10 women who will use birth control in their lifetimes. Again and again, she's been a champion for civil and reproductive rights. So let's raise our coffees, or maybe our mimosas, no shame, to this year's pro-choice champion, Attorney General Ellen Rosenblum.
Thank you, Alexis. I am delighted you are our national leader. Congratulations. And thank you to everyone who is attending this year's virtual Courageous Voice Breakfast. And of course, thank you, PPAO, for honoring me. Pro-Choice Champion is a title I'll wear with pride. And let's appreciate Marilyn Epstein, whose name is associated with this award for a reason. She is the ultimate champion. Championing the basic rights all of us continue to fight for is a responsibility I'm aware of every day. The work this entails should be expected of leaders serving in every public office in our state and country. It shouldn't really take courage to act on our firmly held belief in choice, but it still does. We need pro-choice champions everywhere for the sake of patients across the country who need a safe abortion, for the sake of families who still face barriers to reproductive care because of how much money they have, or where they live, or the color of their skin, and for the sake of patients who need their medicine to come in the mail, especially in this time of COVID-19. The fight for reproductive freedom is as essential and urgent as ever. As long as anyone faces barriers to accessing essential reproductive care or to the basic right to a safe abortion, I will be joining you in working to knock those barriers down. Get between me and reproductive rights, and I will fight with the ferocity of a mama bear, a term I often use to characterize my role as the people's attorney. I remember what life in our country was like for women before Roe v. Wade, and I am determined to ensure that that unfair and dangerous reality remains behind us, though written up in history as an important reminder we must never go back. One of the main reasons I ran for Attorney General 8 years ago was the opportunity to both defend and expand Oregon's special place when it comes to reproductive freedom. This fight is incredibly important to me, but I also want to be clear. None of the work we do when it comes to reproductive freedoms is a solo act. When I go to court to defend the right to choose, I'm always relying on the support and hard-fought accomplishment of so many resolute allies here in Oregon and across the country. Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon is one of those key allies. I just don't know what we'd do, and I hesitate to think where we'd be without you. It's because of your advocacy that Oregon is a definitive leader and national beacon for reproductive freedom and equity. You helped us pass the Reproductive Health Equity Act in 2017 to ensure all Oregonians have access to the full range of preventive reproductive health services, regardless of citizenship status, gender identity, or type of insurance. You are constantly organizing and advocating to make sure our laws and the people who write them represent what we all know to be true. Abortion is health care and a basic right for all of us. So we've made plenty of progress, yes, but we still have so much work ahead of us, and we still face staunch, mobilized opponents who refuse to respect our freedom and who also continue to deny racial equity, which is a critical piece of reproductive freedom. Please know, as long as I'm your AG, I'll be taking on extremists and their attacks, no matter what corner of the country they come from. And I'll be fighting alongside PPAO and others who are pushing us forward toward a future in which choice truly is a tangible freedom that all Americans can exercise. Everyone has the right to decide if and when to have a family. Plain and simply, we must keep it that way. You are all amazing. Thank you for this incredible honor.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Sadlu. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the Northern Regional Field Organizer with Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon.
And my name is Becca Hill. My pronouns are they and them, and I'm the Southern Regional Field Organizer for PPAO. As Isa Noyola, a trans Latina activist, has said, there is no movement without culture. We at Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon fight on all fronts to maintain access to reproductive health care, but we could not sustain this movement without our people, who create our culture of resilience, support, and celebration in this work. This morning, we are proud to honor Marshall Hirschfield of Portland with this year's Volunteer Excellence Award. Planned Parenthood was there for Marshall in some of her major life moments, providing accurate sex education and compassionate care free of shame and judgment. Now we get to celebrate and thank her for showing up for us and for exemplifying the culture of movement building in every way.
Mar joined our team as a legislative and electoral fellow in 2019, helping to pass the nation's most progressive paid family and medical leave law. During our lobbying efforts, she bravely shared her experience as a working mom who needs time to care for her own young children with our elected representatives in Salem. Last summer, Marshall was selected as a representative of PPAO to attend the 2019 People's Summit in Washington, D.C., and worked on a team that developed the Generation Action Program at Portland State University to engage more young people in our movement. Most recently, Mar did amazing work with the We Count Oregon campaign as the Census Equity Manager at the Asian Pacific American Network of Oregon, making sure that Asian and Pacific Islander Oregonians are counted in the 2020 census. PPAO is honored to have Mar's passion and support on this team and to be a small part of her growing leadership in Oregon. Please join us in honoring our 2020 Volunteer Excellence Award winner, Marshall Hirschfield.
Woo, go Mar!
Aloha. The first time I ever received any type of sex ed, I was 15 years old and I was sitting in the lobby of Planned Parenthood in Hawaii waiting to take a pregnancy test. The first time I choose to have sex, and here I am alone to navigate a pregnancy. I attended a prestigious college prep high school, but I was never given any information on safe sex. I chose to have an abortion at 15, and I am so grateful for the folks at Planned Parenthood who walked me through my options, procedure, and guidance. My family is Asian and Pacific Islander. My great-grandparents were the first generation to move to Hawaii. Therefore, my mom only wanted to talk about my GPA, the AP classes I was taking, and everyone else's business except our own. My family believes in the American dream, that hard work will be rewarded. So when I moved to Oregon to attend Portland State University, that mindset followed me. The night before my mom moved back to Hawaii, she sent me an email, and I don't really remember what it said, except the last line where she said, "I'm proud of you and I love you." I share that with you because I learned that words of affirmation is my love language. So when I made the choice to become a parent at 19, I wanted to make sure that affirmations were centered in the relationship with my son. I was unknowingly navigating through my trauma. And Planned Parenthood, this time in Oregon, was once again where I sought out my care. In 2019, I was forwarded the Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon email seeking applicants for their fellowship. I was ecstatic to be applying for an opportunity to give back to an organization that guided me through big life decisions. Everyone deserves access to comprehensive sex education and deserves the right to make decisions about their reproductive health, free of shame and guilt. When I began my work as a fellow, I was introduced to many practices, terminology, and care that I never experienced anywhere else. The dots started to connect for me. I was a teen parent juggling full-time work, trying to be the first one in my family to graduate from a university by balancing going to school full-time. I was also experiencing not being able to qualify for low-income housing, $10 in SNAP benefits, and not qualifying for employee-related daycare and many other programs. And prior to becoming a fellow, I really believed that I just wasn't working hard enough. Through the fellowship program, I found my voice. I found that while yes, there is circumstances that we do not control, we have power in our choice. The Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon Fellowship activated me to be the bridge between political advocacy and my community. I continued my work as Census Equity Manager, and now through the leadership and mentorship of my Planned Parenthood family, I am so proud to announce that I'm Political Director at Apano. We need to continue to center and elevate Black and Brown leadership, and I am so thankful for Planned Parenthood's opportunity, and therefore it is a great honor and pleasure to fully accept the Volunteer Excellence Award this year.
When I came out as non-binary trans, I was in my 30s. That's 2 decades of doctor's appointments, sex ed classes, and pregnancy scares, and healthcare that assumed I was female. Are you a woman or a man? I wanted to check both or neither on the intake form because neither category made sense to me. I knew deep down that coming out meant there was no space for me. No box to check, no gender marker on my ID. Choosing to live as myself would mean becoming nothing. There were no spaces for people like me. I'm so scared that transgender and gender non-conforming folks like myself and other patients are losing access to Planned Parenthood across the country. So that is why I am here today to stand with Planned Parenthood advocates of Oregon to ensure we have the strongest advocacy and political efforts possible to keep Oregon a safe haven and point of access at this critical time. To say that doctors' offices are traumatic for trans people is an understatement. In the place where I should have felt safest, where trained professionals probe the most private areas of my body and ask me to divulge confidential information about my preferences, relationships, and medical history, I am most at risk. I may be a person who menstruated, but I am not a woman. I may have facial hair and a deep voice, but I am not a man. My earliest experiences with reproductive health care were frightening. My first pap smear was so painful and scary that I avoided exams for as long as possible. When I couldn't put it off anymore, I made an appointment at Planned Parenthood on Southeast Foster because it was close to my college and because a friend told me she'd gotten an IUD there for free. My fear that I was carrying around some kind of infection outweighed my fear of pelvic exams, but all the same, I got lost twice on the way to find the clinic. I did not want to go. When I arrived, a whip-smart woman in Lisa Loeb glasses and a white doctor coat beckoned me into the back office. I am 6'1", and I towered over her, but my knees were like jelly. What if she hurt me, like that other doctor did? She looked me up and down and guided me into an exam room. "We're slammed, so I won't keep you waiting," she said. "You can undress from the waist down." So I didn't have to be naked. There were no questions about my identity or how many partners I had. This was a relief too. I slid my jeans off and hopped onto the table. There were no stirrups, so I pressed the bottoms of my feet together, making a diamond shape with my legs. The room was more like a closet than a cold clinical cell. "Perfect," she said when she came back. She took a small plastic device out of a wrapper and turned to the array of Q-tips and lube spread out on a paper towel. "You stay just like that. This is going to be easy." I didn't believe her, but then I didn't really have a choice. I closed my eyes and thought about the funniest scenes from The Princess Bride, which is what I do when I have to endure any painful situation. I felt pressure for a second, and then the doctor took her hand away. "I'll be right back," she said. She returned in a moment with another device and gave me the same gentle but persistent treatment. "Just as I thought," she said. "What?" I said. "What is it? Is everything fine?" "I just needed a bigger speculum." She held it up, glistening, and then dropped it into the trash. "Sometimes people with longer legs have longer vaginas too." "We're done?" "Yep. They'll do a finger stick test for HIV if you want. I got all the rest taken care of." It had taken less than 60 seconds and was as painless as inserting a tampon. I didn't realize until much later that at no point had the doctor said anything about my gender, called me a girl, commented on my sex choices, or offered me advice. She didn't shame me. She didn't force me to read state-issued literature about abortion or abstinence. Instead, she put me at ease and made me laugh. Her treatment ensured that I came back every time I needed help. And I needed a lot of help sometimes. This was before the staff wore gender buttons or put pronoun options on the intake forms, but the same degree of trust and respect was there for me all along, even as a panicky college freshman. I went to the clinic when I was in love and out of it, in trouble and jubilant. I went there when the condom broke and when the marriage ended and when my period didn't come. I went there when it was illegal to be trans and when it was dangerous to be queer. And I felt safe and I felt seen. And I stayed healthy largely because of this consistent compassionate care. I continued seeing Planned Parenthood providers. I evolved, and so did they. In the years after that first exam, I came out as trans and medically transitioned to the person you see today. Planned Parenthood didn't bat an eye. The bathroom where I provided my samples was gender neutral and inclusive. The forms had a spot for my gender identity and didn't make assumptions about my sexuality. The providers remained knowledgeable, affirming, and kind. I never felt I had to explain myself or hide who I was. No matter what was happening politically outside the clinic, the exam room was a safe place where I was honored and seen. While some right-wing conservatives want to politicize sexual and reproductive care, I don't come to Planned Parenthood to make a political statement. That's why we need to support Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon's work to protect the health centers so patients can continue to have experiences like me. There are so few places where trans people are truly equal, but I can say with confidence that one of them is in a Planned Parenthood clinic. I went there as Claire, and I went there as Foster, and the care I received was always excellent. No matter where I was in my life, I was treated the same. I can count on one hand the number of places in my life where I feel this welcome. In a culture that treats trans people like a mistake or an interruption to the natural order, I feel like a person when I go to my clinic. That's why I am a Planned Parenthood supporter for life. Their advocacy affects all kinds of bodies, and their commitment to trans-specific healthcare levels the playing field for people like me, who have historically been discriminated against, erased, and harmed by medical providers. I never had to fight for good treatment at Planned Parenthood. They made it clear from day one that I'm always in good hands. They've seen it all before. And because of that, they'll be seeing me again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Foster, for sharing your experience as a Planned Parenthood patient. My name is Rachel Pilliard, and I'm proud to serve as the board vice chair for Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon and Planned Parenthood PAC of Oregon. Before medical school, I worked as a legislative aide and a grassroots organizing trainer. Now that I'm a doctor, I can tell you just how interwoven Planned Parenthood's legislative and fieldwork is to the clinical care that I provide. Every patient that I've had the privilege to work with and for carries with them the layers of social, professional, personal, and economic goals. They come looking for honest and truthful information shaped by many years of education, postgraduate training, fellowship, and ongoing clinical care delivered at the highest standards of my profession. They come to me carrying their religious, political, and educational experiences. Abortion does not divide neatly by political party, religious conviction, or resources, despite what national dialogue would have us believe. Recently, I cared for a patient diagnosed with a lethal fetal anomaly. She came to her visit with her mother. I explained the findings on imaging and genetic testing and why we understood this meant that her baby wouldn't survive more than minutes after birth, if not die in labor. She asked thoughtful and terribly hard questions about pain and suffering. All the while, her mother listened. She asked me about future pregnancies, the siblings of her baby. She talked about how unfair the situation was for everyone involved. We sat together for hours, reviewing this information as well as her options. And I told her that whatever path she went down, I would be there to support her and keep her safe. Finally, I asked if there were any additional questions, and her mother spoke. She asked me if I believed in God. Taken a bit off guard, and despite what I've already told you about abortion not dividing neatly down lines, I wrongly assumed this question would result in a series of statements about abortion in their family and their belief system. Instead, she said, "Our family believes in God, And we know that with God in our lives, we can get through this, no matter what happens, and no matter what she decides. Each person, each story, each experience carries something new for me to learn as well. No one ever wants to find themselves in this situation, but even on their worst day, this individual and her family had access to trusted medical advice and care in order to make a decision that was best for her. Now, admittedly, this is an extreme example, but in truth, in my work, I encounter these discussions regularly. Every individual's decision is different, some like this, and for some, abortion is simply the best decision for them. This is only possible because of the work that Planned Parenthood does. There are too many states and regions where trust is undermined by people in positions of authority who have no personal knowledge or medical knowledge to inform their judgment. And my colleagues and I are aware of an increasing amount of pressure to criminalize expert medical opinion. Though I feel incredibly lucky to live in a state like Oregon, I know that I'm always one election away from living in a very different landscape. We cannot do this work without you. I'll be honest, we're in uncharted territory, a global pandemic, all of us who still have power in our state peering in from home or work. Our field teams are facing an election in November with a new playing field and entirely new rules when consequences are higher than ever before. Money isn't the only way to contribute, and trust us, we have loads of ways for you to join this fight. But right now, we need contributions to get capably to November with a never-before-seen field campaign driving an unprecedented get-out-the-vote effort to see Planned Parenthood PAC-endorsed candidates retained in office or voted into new office.
Hi, my name is Ann Doe. I'm the political director for Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon and Planned Parenthood PAC of Oregon. I want to give a shout out and a thanks to NARAL Pro-Choice Oregon for these amazing masks. It is a mantra and a mood going into November. And this year, many politicians will learn a hard lesson. When you attack our health, our rights, our freedom, or try to get between Rachel and her patients as they decide what is best for that patient and their family, you will lose your job. We expect politicians to listen to us, to prioritize individuals' health, and to fight to protect and expand access to reproductive health care. Oregonians will not stand idly by as politicians push for dangerous and unpopular policies that strip us of our basic rights, nor will they tolerate obstructionist tactics like multiple walkouts that take the legislature hostage at the expense of taxpayers and vulnerable Oregonians. This November, we have the opportunity to flip seats in the Senate and the House from legislators who are rabidly anti-reproductive health care to true defenders of reproductive freedom and health care for all. Planned Parenthood PAC of Oregon has played a decisive role in races across the state, harnessing the power of everyday people to send a loud and clear message. Women, people of color, LGBTQ folks, and immigrants will never go back to when we were treated without the dignity and respect every person deserves. And that's why it's more important than ever that we prepare for this coming election. Planned Parenthood PAC of Oregon is a trusted and respected messenger because we get results. And now you can help make sure that we have all the resources we need to win big in 2020. Your donation will help us run phone banks and text banks and support more candidates. I'm here this morning to ask you to make a donation to keep Oregon moving in the right direction, even during these incredibly uncertain times. I'm going to ask you to stand with Planned Parenthood PAC of Oregon. Is there anyone who can donate $1,000 or more? If you can, please comment in the comment section so we can appreciate you.
Yeah, I know that this is an awkward format.
I know my glasses are fogging up, my mask is slipping down. We're doing our best. Everyone's doing their best.
We never really thought we'd be telethon leaders, but here we are. And I promise you that this contribution, this format for contributing, this timeline makes a huge, huge difference. So we're very excited. We do have some donations coming in. Please put your comments in the comment list.
Kate Lieber, $2,500. Thank you so much. That is incredibly generous.
We also have a $1,000 donation from the amazing Kristen Coppola.
Kristen,
former
thank
board
you.
chair. We miss
you.
Thank you. We cannot do your work in all real ways. Money is just one way, but it really, really does fund a lot of the important work that we do. Your donation, you go ahead.
No.
You go. Your turn. Your turn.
We're just really excited. Thank you for your generosity. I mean, this donation will go so far to help us invest not only in winning these races, but to building the pipeline for future leaders of this movement. This contribution will help pay for
our amazing fellows. Our fellows have helped power our legislative and electoral wins. Our fellowship teaches them how to do grassroots organizing. We've been so proud and honored to see them take those skills to go on and do incredible things. Can we just talk a little bit about how amazing our volunteer and fellow of the year is?
Oh
Mar,
my God,
we're so excited for you.
We're so thrilled for you. We're so thrilled we're going to be able to work with you in your new position at Apano as political director. But we also have other levels of giving, and every dollar matters. So who can support Planned Parenthood PAC of Oregon at the $500 level? Please comment in the section to let us give you a little bit of love.
Yeah, and welcome to those of you who are across the state joining us on the live feed. You're joining us while we are raising critical resources to allow Planned Parenthood to do the advocacy and political work that is needed to ensure care that is under attack across the country and even right here in Oregon. And we do have some more donations coming in.
It looks like we've got $500 from our board chair. Thank you, Beverly Pearman, for this donation.
I see Ann Udall also for $500. Thank you so much, Ann.
Andy Petkus, Shaban, and Oreo, thank you all so much for your donation.
And while those are coming in, we can't thank you enough. Any donation amount matters. If you can donate at the $250 level, can you please comment in the comment section? That link is live. Send it to all of your friends.
In this time of COVID, I mean, normally during the election times, what we do is we hit the pavement, we go door knocking. It's kind of not a thing that we can do right now. So we got to get creative to do voter outreach because it's more essential than ever. Your contribution, Sharon Robbins at $250 and Sharon Myring, thank you so much, Commissioner, at $250 as well. These contributions will help us pay for mailers, postage, text messages, and phone banks.
In 2018, our field organizers co-led a statewide Get Out the Vote texting campaign, sent a whopping 850,000 texts to Oregon voters. And this year, it is more critical than ever to connect with voters to dispel misinformation and to make sure people know where their ballot drop boxes are located and how to get their vote counted.
And our field organizer, Lindsay, who helped to co-lead that coordinated effort, says, sorry, not sorry for blowing up all of your phones, and also expect a message in November.
We have a lot more programming coming up, and of course, our keynote is on the way. But we want to know every donation amount matters and counts and does the work that we need to do. $100, $50, get your political tax, what is it?
Credit.
Yeah, sure.
Oregon will help you pay for your donation today of $50 to Planned Parenthood PAC of Oregon. Thank you so much for your donations. Again, if you can take advantage of that political tax credit of $50 come tax time, the state will reimburse you on your tax form for that political contribution. Anna Rossi for $250. Thank you so much. Really, that's just $200 with your political tax credit.
Great. And I think we're almost out of time, but just wanted to thank everyone. If you could put $25, $10, $15, $10, $20, 20 cents, whatever you can do. And most importantly, if you can share the link.
Yes. So if you can go ahead and share the link to your friends and family, share the live feed, share the donation link. If we all did that and reached out to our networks.
I'm doing it right now, literally right now.
Be Rachel, be like Rachel, share with your friends. We want our advocacy to be people power, and we know we can win with thousands of small donations. They add up to have a huge impact. Thank you, Representative Solomon, for your $250 donation. Thank you, everyone. Share it out, and thank you so much for your generosity this morning.
My name is Annie Shao, and I am proud to serve as board member for Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon. Because especially during a pandemic, Oregonians need more healthcare, not less. Reproductive healthcare is healthcare, and healthcare is a basic human right. In fact, I was so inspired by this event last year that I reached out to Emily to find out how I could get more involved in this urgent work. It takes every one of us to actively practice using our courageous voices to bring about the systemic changes that we want to see, so that every person has equitable access to the reproductive care that they need, regardless of race, gender, sexuality, or immigration status. It is my honor this morning to introduce today's keynote speaker, Cheryl Strayed. Cheryl is the author of best-selling books Wild, Tiny Beautiful Things, Brave Enough, the critically acclaimed novel Torch, and popular advice column Dear Sugar. Her story inspired Oprah Winfrey to revive her tremendously popular book club, and her books have been translated into nearly 40 languages and adapted for both the stage and the screen, including Reese Witherspoon's Academy Award-nominated Wild in 2014. Strayed's essays have been published in the New York Times, the Washington Post magazine, Vogue, Allure, Salon, and many more. A longtime feminist activist, she's been outspoken about the body positivity movement, about her mother's sudden death from cancer, and about her personal experience with abortion. She previously worked as a political organizer for the Abortion Rights Council of Minnesota and is a founder and board member of VITA, Women in Literary Arts. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to this year's Courageous Voice, Cheryl Strayed.
Hi everyone, I'm Cheryl Strayed. I am so thrilled to be here with you today in support of Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon. Okay, I'm not with you. I'm actually in my attic in Northeast Portland, and you are wherever you are. But I have to say, I still feel like I'm with you. I feel like we are together in this fight to protect and expand reproductive rights, in this fight for affordable access to reproductive health care, and together in our support of this amazing organization, Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon, that does important work for us Oregonians and also is a leader nationally. We are fortunate to live in a state where legal access to abortion is not restricted, but it's so vitally important that we do not get complacent and take that for granted. And it's also so vitally important that we continue to expand those rights so that we can continue to be a national model for reproductive rights in this nation and indeed this world. I'm not going to talk to you today about the specific work the organization does. Rather, I thought I would talk to you a bit about what the title of this event means to me. What does it mean to have a courageous voice when it comes to reproductive rights? I think it does take a lot of courage. Sadly, because our bodies have so often been shamed, our sexuality has so often been shamed, it's been a taboo subject to talk about reproductive rights, to talk about birth control and abortion. The first activists for this cause were arrested on the streets for obscenity. And later, even for years, even in recent times, there's a sense that we should be ashamed to say, yes, I have a body and my body deserves autonomy. I have the right to have agency over my body. I think that one of the best, bravest, most courageous things we can do is shuck that off. I think the bedrock of courage is truth-telling, is saying, I am going to be honest about who I am and what I experience and what I know. That to me is a courageous voice. A few years ago, when there was one of the more recent social media campaigns where people were tweeting and posting and saying, I had an abortion, I had an abortion. That was all about that kind of courage. The kind of courage that says, I'm going to tell you the truth even though you tell me I shouldn't, even though you tell me I don't have a right to, even though you tell me I should be ashamed of it. So we are gathered here today, obviously, for the mission of achieving reproductive rights, but I think in a deeper way about the right to tell the truth about our bodies, the right to tell the truth about sexuality and sex and about life. Every time you do that, you're speaking with courage on behalf of this vital, important movement. Another piece of courage after we've done the truth-telling is to be persistent, to stick with it. Many of you probably know of my book Wild, my memoir about my 1,100-mile hike on the Pacific Crest Trail that I did when I was 26 in the summer of 1995, 25 years ago. And it was really, I walked the whole state of Oregon. It was really a long walk. And whenever I tell people about it or they talk about Wild, I think that a lot of times people think of like the big thing, the final achievement of having actually covered all those miles. But what I think about, and what I think is in connection to this idea of a courageous voice, is I think about the persistence it took on the micro level, the daily commitment to keep walking, the daily commitment to put one foot in front of the other, even when I thought I couldn't. Honestly, there were times that I thought, I cannot take another step, and I took another step. I cannot take another step, I took another step. I think in our fight for justice when it comes to reproductive rights, for justice when it comes to access and affordability for reproductive health care, persistence is such a key point, because it is a long struggle. Those people I mentioned who were arrested for obscenity are long dead. I first got involved in this movement when I was a teenager. I was served as an escort, what we called an escort, outside the Planned Parenthood in St. Paul, Minnesota, because clients who were trying to get into the building were being attacked by anti-choice protesters. That was a long time ago. And we were fighting then for so many of the same things we're fighting for now. I don't take that as a mark of defeat. I take that as proof that it takes courage to make real change. And I, for one, want to hold on to that across this virtual space. I want to say thank you to all of you who've had the courage to continue to show up for this organization, to continue to show up on behalf of this cause and this movement and this human right. And I also want to thank Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon for sticking with it. We measure our victories over the long haul. It isn't, we don't get to the finish line every day. We get to it only after a long journey. And so I think it's really empowering to think about persistence as courage. Lastly, what I want to say about courage is that it takes optimism. I know that I'm not alone. I wish I could look into your faces right now and see you nodding your heads when I say, boy, what a hard time we're all living through. What a time of daily assault against the notion that we should have access to reproductive health care, that reproductive rights should even be a thing, that abortion should be legal, that access to birth control should be illegal. We are being assaulted daily on many fronts by people and organizations in power. And it's hard. It's hard not to feel diminished by that, to feel a sense of despair. But what I want to say to you is we do not have the luxury of despair, that we need to stay positive and optimistic about the gains that have been made. Most people agree with us. Most people agree that we should have reproductive rights and that we should have access to reproductive health care. I take great comfort in that. Lots of people have grown and changed their minds. Our society has shifted slowly, incrementally, but it has shifted nonetheless. We get to now say, yes, body autonomy is a thing, even if you will shame us for it. Those are the things that I take heart in when I'm feeling kind of grim about it. When I think about the work that Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon does every day on behalf of Oregonians, I feel an enormous bright cheer inside of me, because I know that what they're doing is fighting on behalf of things, of ideas and truths that I hold dear. And so try to stay positive. Make your voice heard, not out of a sense of despair, but out of a sense that we can do this together. We can. Please support Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon. Please join me in celebrating the courage that they are for all of us every day. Happy trails.
This morning, we want to take a moment to recognize the recent loss of an incredible Planned Parenthood champion. We are missing Susan Hammer and wish to remember her for her remarkable contributions and years of support for reproductive health and rights. She served as board chair for Planned Parenthood Columbia-Willamette. She led the capital campaign for PPCW's Regional Service Center, and she was the first recipient of the Planned Parenthood Susan Hammer Award for Transformative Leadership. As with so many of you, Susan was my friend. She was a true trailblazer in the legal profession. She was at the forefront of building leadership among women in the law. I have so many stories to share, from when she was my campaign manager when I first ran for judge in 1990, to petitions Susan spearheaded to ensure the bar was representative and welcoming for women lawyers. Susan was also an internationally renowned mediator. I look forward to other opportunities to celebrate her life and her many accomplishments.
Hello, my name is Bita Mogadam. I am proud to serve as a new board member for Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon and Planned Parenthood PAC of Oregon. I am a scientist, a neuroscientist to be exact. I'm a professor and chair of the Department of Behavioral Neuroscience at OHSU. I moved to Oregon about 3 years ago from Pittsburgh, where I was a faculty member, a professor at Department of Neuroscience in the University of Pittsburgh, and a proud member of Board of Planned Parenthood of Western Pennsylvania. I'd like to thank our sponsors, table hosts and volunteers, and everybody that has helped put today's event together. I'd also like to thank our 2020 pro-choice champion, Attorney General Ellen Rosenblum, and Volunteer Excellence Award winner Marcel Hirschfield. And finally, a warm thank you to Cheryl Strait. You inspire all of us. Without supporters like you, we couldn't be doing what we do. Without supporters like you, we couldn't fight the national attacks against us and say, not in Oregon every day. I invite you to take today's inspiration and express your courageous voices every day.